And we are back yet again. Episode 50, Lyrical Ones. I am usually grateful, thankful, appreciative, and today I am as well. Joined with my super incredibly athletic, multitasking, able to produce results in any type of atmosphere co host, Alfluent. How are you doing today?
I'm blessed. I'm fortunate to be here, to be 10 toes down, as they say. Um, I feel like I sometimes I just like hit the jackpot. You sometimes you feel like you wake up and you hit the jackpot. Like I really enjoy waking up because it allows every other blessing to happen. Um, like without waking up, I don't get to see the rest of it, and so I'm really happy that I woke up today and that I get to be here with you all. And I'm excited for our guest. I'm excited for um, this exchange. And before we get to our lovely guest, Cineo, let me know how you're doing today.
So I'm cool. I can't front. I'm good.
That is, are you fronting or are you cool?
Listen, okay, we say things as a way to create a buffer. It's a fence, it's a boundary, right? That's fronting, I guess. I don't know, right? These terms we use, right? We use these terms, we don't even think about them. They just become interchangeable as a buffer, right? It's almost like a loading screen. For me, my brain sometimes operates in the 32-bit era for those that are very young, those that may have been born after the 2000, the turn of millennium. I'm from, the 90s, right? Even though I was born in the 80s, I'm a child and byproduct of the 90s. And there was these consoles called a PlayStation and a Sega Saturn. And what would happen is there would be a loading screen and it would load for a long period of time. So in my loading screen, it goes, I can't even front. Or, I guess. So
I
for
respect it.
what's going on is I am thankful. Right now, it's not to say that sometimes I don't front. I do front. Like I'll put on a face just to be present in a moment in terms of my responsible face for the people. Right, responsible face for the people, because sometimes it's not responsible to project what is the inner workings of me. Sometimes it is. It depends. Right, you gotta be flexible. You gotta be fluid. Right. So for me, right, loading screen, being honest, being present, being truthful. I'm good today. Other
Got it.
times you could feel the heat come off me. So
Got
I
it. So
don't feel
you
like it's
you
in no
pro you
heat.
pro you processing. You're not quite ultra instinct, but right now you loading.
Yeah, I'm
And
loading. I'm getting beat up, but I'm
maybe a,
good.
maybe a more pertinent question is, how's the mask fitting?
You know what? I gotta say, I'm appreciating how the mask is fitting today. It seems to be giving me no issues, no problems. I'm gonna, I'm working on some things, right? I feel like we're approaching, not even a feeling. I know we're approaching a year of being, consistent with this. So I think I have to be, consistent with change and growth. So I'm gonna think about what is it that I could do to represent this mask in another new year.
Well, our guest had a suggestion um, in the form of a helmet,
That is
and
true.
would you like to introduce our guest today?
Well, actually, I think I would like our guests to introduce themselves. Please, by all means, let the people know who you are, right? What is it that you do? And we're going to roll into it.
I'm Charlotte Ashlock. You can find me on socials under the username Crazy Idealist. And
Boom.
because sometimes you have to be a little crazy to be an idealist, and I'm very determined about it. I like to perform poetry under the stage name Lady Dragon. And I'm working on being a comedian. I'm trying to hone my craft. And my day job, I'm a book editor. So I spend all my days supporting authors and supporting artists. And then my nights, I'm trying to work on my own art. And honestly, it's supporting other people that feels the most impactful and the most beautiful. And so when I was talking to you before the show, you're like, the show is about lifting people up. And I'm like, yeah, I feel like I have a lot in common with you that way. It's like lifting someone else up is what feels the best.
That's real. And, you know, just to kind of hone in on it, you also have ties to someone who's been on the podcast before. So would you like to kind of uplift and highlight that person as well?
Yeah, Greg, OD the Wordsmith, also known as my pastor, and also known as my friend, and also known as the father of the baby I'm a fairy god aunt for, adorable baby Willow.
Baby tree. Baby Willow tree.
Such a treat. Okay, story about baby Willow. I was hiking with her mother, Andy, and baby Willow was babbling and sort of giggling, and I was telling Andy a sad, sad story, and Willow just kept on giggling. So I looked at her. I finally said, Willow, are you making fun of me and my sad, sad story? And she threw her arms in the air and she screamed, yeah!
Right on time. It's the delivery. She's got it. She's got it perfect. She's got it honest, as they say.
How old is Willow?
Just over a year now. Mm-hmm.
So keep that in mind, y'all, right? It's the pure essence and innocence of obliviousness and ambiguity that a child can harness at any given moment, regardless of how you feel. So yeah, shout out to Willow. They be out here just, you know, letting it be known. What's your feelings? So OD, who, you know, I'll antagonize out of rap retirement. You know, shout out to him. But you know, more importantly, uplifting people. I mean, let's just get into it. What does that look like for you on a day-to-day? What does that mean? Right? Is that in your focus of job or your occupation? Is that just who you are outside and away from that? Like, take us through that. What does that mean for you today to uplift and help support people?
Yeah, so most people think being an editor means critical and taking the red pen to something and tearing it apart. And my job is actually the opposite of that, because the people who have the best ideas are always the people who feel like their ideas are not good enough to share yet. Like maybe next year. Maybe next year they'll finally be good enough, because it's that drive to improve that makes the ideas so good. But it's also that drive to improve that makes it scary to share. So I keep an eye on the topics I'm interested in, the speaking, the social media, the blogs, the podcasts. And when I find someone who has a really good idea, I reach out to them and say, you should develop that more. You should publish a book with my company. And, you know, the longest it's ever taken me or anyone of my coworkers to between that initial conversation and the book finally being published is 10 years. And that's how long it took one of my coworkers. And I haven't even worked at the company for 10 years yet, but you just keep on telling someone they have something worth saying until they say it. And there's a number of people who could tell me I would never have written a book without you.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
That's amazing. Like that's a testament to patience, right? Like that is a true measure of someone's tolerance. You know, people say patience is a virtue. It's a skill. It's so many things. And that persistence and that willingness, that openness to draw somebody in, to let them know, to be patient enough to help them build their confidence, I think is an incredible skill. It's an essential skill, especially as we move into a generation where it seems like the rate of anxiety and that sense of like impending fear of like, who am I? What am I going to be? Who am I going to be? How am I going to participate in society becomes such a big thing. So, I mean, that's crazy to even hear, you know, 10 years, right? Like most people don't even think or ponder like, what does my 10 years look like from now? But to know that that's a journey that you know someone went on in terms of having something worth sharing and someone believing in them enough to help them form that. So for you as an editor, right, we're speaking in the literary space, right?
Yep.
And so when did that become introduced to you that you were going to be an editor? Like, when did you realize you helping someone form what it is that they want to say was going to be something that you were going to do? Like, when was that introduction made?
Yeah, so in college, I was doing this senior project trying to figure out how humans could live sustainably with the environment. And when I did my bibliography, I saw like half the books were published with the same publisher. So I reached out to that publisher and asked for an internship and got it. And it's just, so their focus is they want to publish books that make the world a better place. And the people who are doing the work, the book can be a great tool to support that work and get people reading from the same page as them. So at first it was actually what pulled me in is, we gotta, get our shit together. We gotta stop destroying the planet. We have to get it done. But they publish on a lot of other issues too. It's just the one that first pulled me in.
Okay, and so kind of just zoning in on that concept of interning, because that's one of my favorite words. What was that, a paid internship? Was that a free internship? Was that like, I see the need for experience? Like, what was that internship like for you there at that publisher?
So I had coworkers who really supported and believed in me, even though I was fresh and knew nothing. It was unpaid though. And that was a big problem. And so a few years later, I and a few other people raised that as an issue, and we changed the policy to pay people.
Okay, that's what's up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what was it like having the intern, right? Because it's the passion that drives you and keeps you going, but then having that, the survival instincts, right? Like, what was it like for you to maintain that balance? Like, what was it like to figure it out?
Yeah, so it took me a long time to have confidence in my own creative vision instead of just trying to carry out my coworkers' plans. And what really gave me confidence was publishing The Body Is Not an Apology when it became a big hit. So if you haven't seen The Body Is Not an Apology, you should really check it out and read it. The cover is very memorable. It's a beautiful Black lady, plus size, covered and surrounded by purple flowers and red and yellow and orange ones, mostly nude. And so the message, The Body Is Not an Apology, is reflected in the cover because it's showing a body that's not approved by society as being spectacular and wonderful. And the message of the book is that the key to undoing systems of oppression in the world is radical self-love. It begins with the self. When you fully accept everything about yourself, you're not going to cast shade or shame on anyone else. And then systems of oppression no longer make sense to you, and you're in a position to fight them.
No, that's what's up. I just pulled up the cover of the book. And so is the person on the cover of the book the author of the book as well?
Yes, she's the author. And it was terrifying for her to do that cover, but she wanted to because it's so beautifully the message. And that photo was part of an art project that photographed like 20 or 30 non-traditional bodies in those glamour poses with flowers. And then she was like, it's already out there. Might as well amplify it.
That's right.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's beautiful. Like, it's a beautiful cover. It's a beautiful picture. And yeah, it's like the concept of like, the Eurocentric standards of beauty and how it's perpetuated on people on a mass scale. And this, this picture, this image definitely provokes like, yeah, we ain't rocking with that. We going in a direction that's genuine and authentic. So I think it is a beautiful looking book. I'm definitely gonna have to check that out. But you feel like that. Well, Affluent, what was you gonna say?
No, just that the book itself is, is well traveled now. Just in the last year, it's really become like a banner, for a lot of growth and intersectionality, and in the fight against body shaming. Like it's it's come a long way, in a short amount of time, and it's great that you are able to be a part of that, and just that also in publishing it, it also impacted you. I think that's a really beautiful story, because sometimes being a part of the process of a project, the journey, getting to publishing or getting to the public, is way more powerful than what you see happen afterwards, as it then travels the world. That process and what happens and what's revolving within, and then being unearthed, and then sometimes even exhumed from your own emotional scaffolding, right? It's like it's intense at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like the message has met with so much love from people, but also resistance. Like Amazon refused to publish ads for the book because of the cover. Some of our regular distributors were not willing to carry it. And then the shocking thing happened this year, where the author posted on her Instagram account that Martin Luther King Jr. quote that is posted a bunch every MLK Day. It's just like, I am gravely concerned that the white moderate is the biggest problem, that quote. And then a gang of trolls, false reported her. And the MLK Jr. quote was taken down as hate speech, and her account was froze. She submits a complaint to Instagram. Eventually, they're like, sorry, restore her account. Then she posts a video talking about, how the white supremacist delusion is killing us all, and we all need to be saved from it in reaction to the insurrection in the Capitol. And then that is taken down and frozen as hate speech. And she's like, anti-racist speech is not hate speech, it's love speech. And at this point, it's getting really outrageous. And so she finally gets her account unfrozen, and she throws an Instagram live party with her friend, Dr. Yada Blay, also an amazing author. And the title of the Instagram event is for Black creators considering leaving Instagram because it is racist AF. And thousands of people attend, including a fair number of Instagram staff, and I believe the head of Instagram. And they discuss the process of shadow banning, which is when an artist has content that is controversial or challenges white supremacy. They'll just get bumped down in the algorithm. It's not like you're banned in a way that you know about, but suddenly you've been getting 10% the likes that you did before. And you ask why, and they're like, oh, just be more interesting. But what's happened is they've shadow banned you. They don't want as many people to see your message. And so I learn about all these new things. And Sonia sets up a meeting with the head of Instagram. And she's telling everyone who comes to the event, like, send your angry letters to Instagram. I sent some angry ones myself. And she has a meeting with him. And then when she does this beautiful online training event for my company, I ask her, how'd that meeting go? And she laughs this big, beautiful laugh. She has one of the most beautiful laughs in the world. And she's like, he's not ready to go on his journey.
You just put my whole head on swivel. Something tough right now. Because it's like, as you're saying it, I'm looking right now, right, on Google and seeing the different images of the book, right? And so I see Google Play has her with like almost this butterfly background, right? But it's her, right? And then I see another one And it's like, it's, I guess this is a traditional where it's, the flower bed and she's just laid out. And I look at Amazon, and Amazon's the only one, right, where there's nothing, like it's just flowers, right? And so as you're saying it, I'm seeing it play out in front of me, but then I'm also reminded of the fact that, yeah, like, like challenging white supremacy, right? The white supremacist structures that exist. Like it's sometimes uncomfortable for people to hear that, right? Like just to hear the words white supremacy and the fact that that's been the norm. And people who benefit from it, right? It could be people of color as well. They don't identify with it because of their benefit from it, right? It's this idea of like, oh, well, you're saying things that are harmful, but what is it harmful to? Is it harmful to the inequality that exists, right? Because that's really what we're calling out, is there's harm being done and we're just speaking on the harm being done. And for those causing us harm or benefiting from the harm, right, then it's easy to create this algorithmic equation to then, dismiss, minimize, reduce your scope and scale of impact when these platforms are becoming such a necessary element of human evolution, of human dialogue, of social construct. It's like, say what you want about Facebook and Instagram being a private company. I mean, for some people, this is the only means of communication and contact that they've been able to consistently have during a time period that has been super harmful to people's mental health, right? And so when you have this place where it's like, it's to the point of addiction for some, or a point of dependency for others, it's like, what is your role to highlighting the voices and maintaining space for those difficult conversations? Because you, as much as you have an ivory castle of dictating how things go, come on, like you gotta start the journey at some point. Because yeah, it is a thing where I think about that often, is how far can I push the envelope knowing that someone else controls my bandwidth, right? Like me as an artist, I'm reliant on using these platforms to reach people so they can have access to me, right? That's what it's creating. It creates a entry point into who I am. But if the people that run those entry points are then saying, oh, well, you said something that we don't agree with, right? It's like the difference between having people who are actively discovering and understanding the dynamics in race, power, and kind of the horrible atrocities that have existed and continue to permeate over time, right? Versus lawyers who are able to decipher this really horribly worded stuff to then make a decision on you, to make a judgment on you based off of a law that may or may not have been written in context to human existence. Because I feel like a lot of these laws don't think about humans. It just thinks about control, manipulation, management systems, less about your well-being, your overall health, your sense of self, joy, your identity, right? It's like, oh, well, our lawyers found out that, we have the means to control, restrict, and confine what you say in a bubble. And now we don't have to acknowledge you, right? Because it fits within the law, the standards of the law. And I'm like, yeah, thank you for opening that door. Thank you for shedding some light on that, because it's a conversation worth having it's necessary.
Yeah, and the Instagram is racist AF event had such hopeful messages too, because what Sonia said, because first Dr. Yada Blay was saying, to me, the idea of like boycotting or leaving Instagram makes me nervous because I rely on it for my business. Like it's a source of support for me. And Sonia said, think about it. Instagram is not popping because Instagram is popping. Instagram is popping because we are here.
That's right.
And we are what people come for. And we have the power. And we just got to realize that. She said, we are the technology. And the technology is trying to trick us into thinking it's the technology, but we are the technology. So that was really uplifting for me. And another thing, so I'm trying to shift my habits of speech. I don't always remember, but Sonia always says white supremacist delusion rather than white supremacy.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like the dreamers that Ta-Nehisi Coates refers to um, in his book, Between the World and Me. Are folks who are see themselves as racist and see themselves as different from anyone else, and the fact that the variance in pigmentation offer some kind of difference in genetics or capacity, right, or ability to love or ability to understand, um, and really right there they need to be wake, waking up from the delusion. They need to be woke in a sense, and that term, as that term became popular in the last half of the previous decade, really we all needed to wake up, and we all needed to see what was under the rug and under the bed, and we all need to wake up from and let go of the delusion that these dreamers are grasping to, very similar to a moment in an anime called Naruto, where the world is trapped in a dream called an infinite Tsukiyomi, where everyone is wrapped in a cocoon and they're dreaming of their ideal life, but they're actually in a cocoon that's feeding an entity that's taken over the world. And it's a great commentary for the systems that we are living in, where, right, it's not just financial, it's not it's not just social, it's not just educational, it's not just medical, right? The systems are a part of the delusion, and they reiterate and reinforce the delusion through their lack of care for anyone who is not supported within the delusion.
Yeah, and I had some particular experiences that made me realize that all our liberations are connected. Like, I think a lot of people get nervous because they think, like, if someone else gains something, they lose something, and that's why they're uncomfortable with the conversation. And I realized it was the opposite of that. Like, you gain something, I gain something too. Well, it's a little bit of a long story, but I used to be married to an abusive husband, and he once called the police on me to intimidate me as part of the abuse. And at the time, I kept it secret. Eventually, I told people about it after I left him. And for the longest time, nobody said that was wrong. That shouldn't have happened to you. And the first people who really gave me the message that how I was treated was wrong were the defund the police activists in Oakland, and specifically the Anti-Police Terror Project, because they put out this big survey saying, if the police have mistreated you, tell us, your story. And so I filled it out. I was like, they were helping the wrong person, and they were, they should have been helping me, and they were helping my abusive husband because he was more convincing to them. And so I filled it out, and then after I filled it out, it's like, oh, this, you have a right to, have your wrongs redressed. And even though I was just there with a computer, I just started crying. This was the first time I've ever heard that. And it came specifically from Black activists and the Black Lives Matter. And that was when I realized on a gut emotional level that, Black Lives Matter is fighting for everyone to gain something, and they are protecting me too.
Right. Exactly.
No, 100. I mean, thank you for sharing that, because, it's not only important for people listening, but you really don't know how that is going to impact everyone, right? Like, not only for the listener, but what is it that they're going through? Because yeah, most people never hear what happened to them was wrong. And to have someone identify and let you know, like, yeah, that is like, one, is 100% wrong to be in any form of harm or abuse from anyone, right? Let alone someone who you've decided to commit yourself to, right? Someone who you they say for better or worse, and they just so happen to be more consistent with the worse. And it's like, where do we as people go from here, right? Where it's the unhealthy, toxic relationships that we find ourselves in, right? It's these people who, for whatever reason, commit these actions of wrong. And then how do we as a community, a society, address that harm, repair that harm, reduce that harm? And you're right. It's that realization that when you hear Black Lives Matter, you think it's just so specific to the Black lives, but you don't realize, yeah, that this is a shared experience. That in saying Black Lives Matter, it's really trying to call into focus the wrong that's been done to Black lives, right? But then that doesn't minimize the scope of what's been done wrong to everyone, right? The wrong that's been done to you is shared. It's a shared existence that we have on this earth. And if we can't identify the wrong that's being done to each other, how do we repair anything? How do we identify anything to change anything? And so, yeah, like, you're right. There's no vacuum or isolation with any movement, right? It's human rights, right? We have the right to feel safe. We have the right to not be violated and to be harmed in any capacity, whether it's the mental abuse, the verbal abuse, the physical abuse. It's all wrong. It's all harm, right? And so that extends itself to police abuse, the brutality of these people who are supposed to be our protectors in some weird, I don't even know how to begin to even articulate the complexity of that relationship, but the abuse and the harm is there. It exists. And we share so much of these wrongdoings, right? It's like the fact that he even was able to be convincing to these other authoritarian figures, right? Like, where's the due diligence and investigation? Where's the sense of me feeling safe in the situation, right?
Mhm.
Where's the skepticism at for me to have a chance? Well, and now here we are where it's like, yeah, it would be the ones who aren't identified on the mass level, right? There's no, as much as there's Black Lives Matter, there's no Black Lives Matter union, right? There's no financial institution associated with to guarantee jobs for people who are part of Black Lives Matter. These are people who are volunteering their time, risking themselves to then say, we're going to work towards something more, something better for everyone, right? But yet on the other end of the spectrum, we have these systems that encapsulate and protect these, enshrine these individuals in the harm and the wrong. So, thank you for sharing that. But it highlights how, yeah, everything is intersectional, everything is related, nothing is separate, and we're in this struggle together. It's like, how else can you move forward if it's not together as one people?
Mhm.
Yeah, Charlotte, and acknowledging like that the fight and the liberation um, is a unifying journey. Um, how has that impacted your work or your well, the work that you do as a career, or the work that you do as a lifestyle, and your interaction within community?
Yeah. So I would say that like most white people, when I first started learning about race, I had to navigate discomfort to be part of the conversation. And when I had that profound emotional experience, like, these people are really pursuing the liberation of everyone, and they make me feel cared about. They make me feel protected. I really adjusted my mindset, and then I was able to be enthusiastic and excited about those conversations without some of the former discomfort I've felt. And our company, we're doing this diversity, equity, and inclusion online training program for corporations called Self to Systems, and we're sending relentless emails about it, phone calls about it. The authors in the conversation, I'll keep it really real. One amazing author, Edgar Villanueva, is a Native American activist, keynote speaker, fundraiser, expert, and he talks about reparations as one of the 7 steps to healing. And he says, why are people so scared of the word reparations when the literal linguistic root of the word is repair? So it's the type of radical content that doesn't easily get infiltrated into corporate America. But our main line of books is like leadership books that like CEOs and executives read. And so it's a way to get our typical readership of these executives some really new messages. And then we got some like pushback from some authors and readers. They're like, this feels like a shift in direction. Why is this happening? We don't understand what's going on. Are you trying to be trendy because of George Floyd? And then the CEO was like, what's going on, digital marketing and online training team? And we're like, we're just trying to be part of the corporate civil rights movement, get on board. Like, and he was like, okay, all right. Yes, I am on board. And so that was a really stressful conversation at work that I was able to navigate more easily, because not just because I had that conviction, but because I had this close, trusting team that shared those convictions with me. So we were able to stand together and communicate with leadership and management that they should trust us to know what's going on. Mm-hmm.
No, that's real. Community. It's all about building community, those relationships, those bonds. I think it's super important that people realize, like, times change and you could literally be caught up in history and just be forgotten, or you could get with the times, as they say. And I, I appreciate you, identifying and knowing that, with the times, right? How do you inform those who may be questioning, what is this? Where is this coming from? Why are you doing this? And just laying it out like it's civil rights in the corporate space. What is it? What's the conversation to have? Right? Like, is it uncomfortable? Right? You highlight that discomfort, right? That is so important to understanding. That becomes a part of that white supremacist disillusionment, right? Comfort, right? Security, based on what? Who, in what capacity have we crystallized ourselves in this sense of safety that may be endangering or harming or keeping people on the fringes of that same security, right? And so having that discomfort, right? Having that sense of like just unawareness of like what comes next, right? Just seeing where it goes, knowing that your gut instinct or your heart's leading you in the right direction, but not even really knowing what's the outcome, right? Having that sense of like shiftingness of the metamorphosis of your mind, of your heart, right? Because these people are they're kind of drawing you in, right? The gravitational pull of what they're doing, the energy they're creating, they're manifesting. As unfamiliar as it is, there's this string, this tie, this root that you feel like, I got to get to the center of it. I got to explore it, right? And so you travel through your discomfort. You travel through the different moves and pivots that you have to make within yourself to come into this new self, this new space, right? It's almost like there's a piece of you with these people that you're getting closer to, right? You exploring that. And then it manifests itself as, like, now I speak with the convictions of knowing, based off of the relationships, based off of the people around me, based off of the shared moments and memories that we now have, to then let people know who have no awareness, who maybe are so detached from that, right, to be like, nah, this is what's up. This is what's going on. So right now, like what are the things that are most you're drawn to that you're doing, right? Where's your time being spent? Where's your energy being replenished at? Like what is that for you right now?
Yeah, so I feel like what charges up my energy the most is when someone really cares about what I have to say. Like I had a 10 years long writer's block that it burst like a floodgate as soon as I found someone who would read every word that I had to say. And then I just couldn't stop writing. Like I would wake up at 3 a.m. and be like, I'm going to write an email about all my philosophical thoughts about such and such. And it's going to be 5 pages long. And I know he'll read it because he always reads it. And so, yeah, just being held within a listening space really gives me energy. And I eventually, I ended up losing that friendship and losing that reader. And today I'm feeling really good because in the past few weeks, I've found a new creative support partner who is just as zealous about reading every word I write. And that it makes me feel like I'm on top of the world. It makes me feel like I'm walking on air. Like I was literally singing to myself today. So Andy, married to our friend OD the Wordsmith, she and I do a prayer call every Wednesday lunch break. And she was asking me, how are you feeling today, Charlotte? And I started singing, believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I would feel so free. And she just completely cracked up because all these prayer calls, the whole quarantine time, it's been like, I suck. I suck too. Help. God help. And she was like, what is even happening right now that you're just like, you're so happy, you're like singing. And it's like, I found a new person to believe in me. That's what's up. Mm-hmm.
And how did you come across that person? Like, was it happenstance? Was it at random? Did you pursue them? Were you seeking someone this whole time, or did it just come to you? Like, what was that?
So we had been Twitter acquaintances for like 7 years. And, but never done anything other than exchange banter. And then this past Christmas, he reached out to me about, some emotional turmoil. And then we started having deeper conversations. And then we started sharing stories and poems and novel drafts. And it's just every time I interact with him, it's just so delightful. It makes me want to smile all over my face.
That's what's up. That's what's up. I mean, it is that you just never know where it's going to come from, right? And to have gone through a loss of knowing what it's like to have support, and then you don't have that support, to then finding that support, and then having this almost more informed perspective, this more experienced version of yourself, to then even appreciate it in a whole nother, that loss helps build a level of appreciation that, at least for me, I feel like you can't replicate that. There's no way to really, you have to have some sense of loss to really understand what is the appreciation and gratitude that you have, right? I get on here every time and I talk about that thankfulness and that gratitude, and that's coming from so much loss. It's a reflection on that loss, and not reflecting on the loss as in, it's something to be heartbroken over, as much as it is using that loss as a reminder of what it is that I actually have now. And what is it that I have to gain, and appreciating that, right? Because that loss, once you feel it, that it can hurt. It can hurt a lot. It can hurt severely. But then as soon as you got that thing to appreciate, it's almost as though that loss informs you on how to appreciate it even more than you ever could before. And so, hearing you say that, right, to have that joy where you can sing now, to even have people who know you question what is going on, right? Like, that shows, right? It shows that you've been able to see, okay, now that I have it, I'm going to hold it. I'm going to harness it. I'm going to appreciate it. I'm going to take care of it in a way. And I think that it's hard for people, when you're going through the loss, when you're experiencing it, to then realize there will be a day through happenstance, right? For you, it was 7 years of an acquaintance that all of a sudden things just kind of roll into a whole new, evolution or phase with this person, right? Relatively unknown to then being known to then being appreciated on a scale that you didn't even realize 7 years ago. You didn't even have in your mind, right? But now that joy is being shared where I'm sure when you get on the phone, that joy almost elicits that same sense of joy within the person that's listening, right? Like now you're able to share it and they're happy for you because they care about you. And for people who are listening to this, it's a reminder that in those moments of darkness is a time to refine your appreciation, right? It's not to say that's the intention or that's what you go into it with, but know that that's what happens, right? Know that photosynthesis is going to happen on its own, right? The same thing goes through the experience of loss, and then coming out the other end of it to having this appreciation and this awareness of, I'm so happy that I have it and I know so much more of how to appreciate it. So, it's key. But when it comes to you in writing, when did you realize that writing was something that is a part of you that you were passionate about? Like, how old were you? Like, take us back, or however far back that is.
So my parents love books more than anything. So literally, when I was 3 years old, my mom would be like, Charlotte, let's write a book together. And I'd scribble on the pages with markers and she'd be like, what is that? And then she would like write down like whatever nonsense I babbled and staple the pages together and be like, Charlotte wrote a book. And like, I think she still has some of those.
Wow.
And yeah.
That's great. Like, this is like the type of parent I want to be. Like this, taking notes. Like, oh, I'm stealing that. Obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to your parents for believing in just the essence of what you was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, from the household, like when did it show up outside of the household, right? Like to have the family support, when does it become a thing that you started to share with your friends? Or then was it like something that you just, I got this, I'm gonna take it to school, people see it, and then it's like, okay, I'm gonna lean in even more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I had a couple of teachers who encouraged me, but the first time I shared with someone other than a teacher was the time I had my first enormous crush in 7th grade. And I did not recognize it as a crush because at that time, I did not realize I was bisexual. I was just like, one of my friends gives me so many stomach butterflies, I can't even handle it. And my other friends don't. I guess this is normal. Oh, well. But anyway, her name was Ellen, and she loved books as much as I did. And I would write her these long, long letters, and we made up 2 characters in a fantasy story. And we would not only write each other letters as ourselves, but as those characters. And my character was a traveling minstrel, and her character was an innkeeper who, took care of travelers. And so we would build this whole world together in our minds and our imagination. And that, I think, is one of the happiest memories of my life. Mm-hmm.
That's what's up. Well, if you don't mind sharing, what era was this setting in? I just wanted to, I know it's random, but what era did the setting exist in?
It was kind of a generic fantasy setting, loosely inspired probably by The Hobbit and stuff like that. But yeah, my character had a harp and traveled on foot and was jealous of people who had horses and so forth.
Gang.
Okay, right on. Thank you for that. I appreciate lore of any kind. So having that little bit of, just a little bit more to feed off of, I always appreciate. So thank you for that. Speaking of that, do you feel like there were any notable kind of like literary works that you grew up off of that you seen as sources of inspiration or constant sources of inspiration that you feel like pushed you, drove you, or made you want to be better at your craft?
Yeah, so my favorite author in the world to read is Lois McMaster Bujold, who writes both science fiction and fantasy. And my favorite book by her is Cordelia's Honor, which is a science fiction setting, and it's a romance between two characters on opposite sides of a war, and sort of how they reach for peace and demilitarization together. And there's this line in it which is just so beautiful that I was thinking of earlier in the conversation. She was trying to describe to her mother the feeling of being deeply in love. And she said, when he's cut, I bleed. And when you were talking about, we think that we're separate and that it's really, that's an illusion, our separateness. I was thinking about that line.
Right, exactly. Just like that line, injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's beautiful. Cordelia's Honor. I'm putting that in the notes because, taking a hot line and making a hot song is is it's something all of us artists are about. Is sometimes it's one concept and and we sit with it and dwell in it and immerse ourselves in it, and then we flesh out the whole concept into something that we want to share with the world. And what I love about writers like yourself is that ability to create, right? It's very much, I think for me, it's what I think of when I think of being created in God's image, is that ability to create outside of one function. Whether you could make a cup or a mug or a poem or a novel, where a blade of grass will do what a blade of grass is designed to do, while as humans we are designed to bring light and glory to our creator, and whatever that may look like, whether it's in unison or in harmony, right? We find a way to share with each other. And we, as storytellers, we are also addicted to storytelling. And it's so important that we hear each other's stories to unify and to demilitarize our own world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, now I feel like within the next year we're gonna get a Lewis McMaster Bajot movie, and it's gonna be a wrap. Like, Lyrical Ones needs a cut, because we just saying, we're talking about it now. Because you're right. Like Affluent said, taking a hot line and making a hot song, and I feel like, yeah, when you said that, and giving that also, like, the science fiction element, right? Thinking of these kind of fantastical, right, versions of our own imagination, right? It means a lot to us here on the pod, and of course, some of our listeners as well, right, find themselves in those moments of escapism, right? Like, the escapism is a duality of expression, but also the need to protect ourselves in a world that is causing us harm, right? So we have these metaphors that we channel within these stories that give us the root energy to see the world we want to see, right? To challenge the systems that exist, to tear down all of these oppressive structures that have been trying to control us for so long, right? And so, it is a thing where, yeah, we're gonna need a cut as soon as they start making these big budget multi-million-dollar films off of Lewis McMaster Bajol, because I'm looking right now at the stories and just the amount of the legacy, if you will, of what's been created with these stories. And I'm like, oh, I'm definitely gonna be getting my read on for a little bit. Thank you for sharing that, Charlotte. It's much appreciated. Just because it's a thing that we sometimes lose sight of, right? Is like our own personal, like, where do we lose ourselves? Where do we escape the world at? And I think that you introducing that, especially, like, when someone I love gets cut, I bleed, right? Like that idea of how it wraps into everything we've been saying, right? It's a reinforcement, if you will, of the conversation we've had this whole time, right? Is knowing that some people will, yeah, with every intention try to cut you and not think twice about it. But it's
Right.
not about them, right? It's about the ones who see that and feel that, right? Who share that with you, who want to do and repair everything that they can to see that you're at your best whole self based off of the fact that, yeah, they share that pain with you. It's not in isolation. And I think that, yeah, it's important that we speak on it, that we share it, because you realize like we all have had the same or similar impacts in our own ways. And I think it's, it's amazing.
Yeah, and the person who's cutting you, they're making themselves bleed. Only they're too foolish to realize it.
Exactly.
Exactly. Talk about it. Talk about it, Charlotte. And that's the realness of it, right? It's not just that they don't know that they're cutting the person across from them, right? Or the person around the corner, right? They're also cutting themselves. Like we we are moving away from where we would like to be, you know. And like if we could, demilitarize, right, our energies toward each other, right, and move away from war with each other, just on a on a small community, one-on-one interaction level, um, we would all bleed a little less,
Yeah.
and we can move towards healing.
Yeah, and the violence is built into our language. Like, how many times have we said, like, kill two birds with one stone? Why are we killing birds? So,
Why can't we grow two trees with one seed?
Or feed two birds with one scone.
Nice. Bars. She's here.
Lyrical Ones, episode 50. We are joined with Charlotte, aka Lady Dragons, giving us that fire on episode 50 of Lyrical Ones podcast. I mean, you're right. Because it is a thing where, yeah, we do have a very violent, destructive language. Like it's a very like, and it's passed down to us, right? It's not like I was born with that, equipped with that. Like, let's kill two birds with one stone. It's like, no, like, how do we find ways to increase and manifest more growth, more stability, right? How do we, the normalcy? I was just in a meeting and they were talking about raising their children and how all they do to prevent them from having these fantastical versions of violence, right? And as soon as they start interacting with people outside of their household, right? The parents were like, we try not to get them any type of fictional guns, no guns in the house. But as soon as they got introduced to the concept of it, what do? They go and pick up a stick and it becomes a weapon, right? Someone else introduces this concept to you and then you start to harness on it, right? And then it becomes this other thing, right? But it doesn't mean it has to persist if we're active and aware and we're engaging, right? It's as I had tweeted recently, as I often do, don't let trauma be a rite of passage, right? Like, I think it's so important that we identify trauma for what it is. It was harm that was done to you that you didn't deserve, you didn't need it, but it was done to you, right? And hopefully you can learn from it. Hopefully there's something you can gain from it that can be positive or healthy or helpful. But by no means does that mean it's a rite of passage that should be put onto someone else, right? Because oftentimes we'll not realize it, but we'll perpetuate and project that, right? Like you don't know what it means to go through, but do you need to? You've never been in, but is it necessary to have gone through, right? And I think that it's the same way of thinking of the violent speech that we often have, and we don't even realize we're gravitating towards it because we've become so accustomed to it. We've built a comfort within it, right? Where it's like, well, that's just who I am. And it's like, but is it who you need to be, right? Can we see it differently? Can we try for something different? And I think, yeah, you're right. Like the words that we use oftentimes are so violent that we never take the time to critique them and how they may be harmful to our progression as people. Like you're so right. Like
Yeah, and to give my CEO some credit, that expression comes from him. He's trying really hard to be a good guy.
Nice. The
Mhm.
feed two birds with one stone.
Yep.
Nice.
That's what's
Shout out
up.
to the CEO.
You could feed like 3 birds with one scone, maybe even 4. Keep it real. Scones are kind of like they're heavy. I've had couple scones and they're like, I mean, if I'm not too careful, if I have a scone by itself in isolation, okay. But if I have a scone in accompaniment with other goods, I'm screwed. That's what it is. Like
Mhm.
it's so true, man. Feed a bunch of birds with one scone. Keep it real.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I miss having my daily scone on the way to work. It used to be my morning ritual before COVID. Julie's
Man,
scones by MacArthur Burt.
bars. Nice. Let's go. Shout out to the local spot, the hyper local. The hyper local
Yeah.
spot.
Support local. Support what you can when it comes to local. Like the Lyrical Ones podcast by listening. Let your people know because we're local as it gets and global at the same time, which is local in a sense. But I'm just saying, like, you know what I'm saying? Speaking of that, where does the journey start for you geographically? Like when you were growing up, where did you grow up? Like take us to that city, that state, that place, that community, the surroundings.
Yeah, I grew up in Ames, Iowa, and University Town. It's kind of a more liberal area embedded in a more conservative one. My dad was this grumpy math professor who got really mad when the football coach pressured him to give passing grades to football players who were failing. And I don't know, it was a peaceful childhood, but I was so much happier when I left Iowa because they're too obsessed with being normal here, normal in Iowa, and then here in the Bay Area they celebrate the weird, and so
Celebrate the weird.
that's why I love being here.
Yeah, baby, we out here with the weirdness. You feel me? I'm sitting here with goatee for the mask on. You feel me?
Mhm.
But when did you leave Iowa? When did you realize, all right, I got to go?
My family moved to Canada, and actually they became Canadian without me. And I always joke, that's such an un-American thing to do. You swore allegiance to the Queen of England to become Canadians. You're traitors, but I'm happy for them that they're Canadian in reality. And
Right.
yeah, and and I bounced around. I went to Bard College in upstate New York, did a few different jobs, and finally ended up here where I belong.
That's right.
Okay. What brought you to the Bay? Right, to go from the East Coast to the West Coast, there is some similarities and there is some deep contrast. So, what was it that you were like? Okay, you know what, East Coast, as much as I may appreciate or not appreciate you, I got to go to the West Coast.
Yeah, so it was a job offer for my current company that has all the amazing authors, and I got the job because I had actually read and loved so many of the books and cared about the subject matter, and I had a lot of pressure on me not to move, but I did, and I'm so glad I did.
We are
That's
too.
what's up.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely appreciate it. I mean, to me, a lot of people get attracted to coming to the Bay, and there's nothing wrong with that. Please come, because we do appreciate the weird. We celebrate the weird. We are weirdos. It's a thing that has been long standing as far as I can remember, and I think that it's important to have those differences, right? Like the different perspectives, the different faces, the different likes and the different dislikes, if you will. I feel like the dialogue and the conversations are much different than if you're in other places, regions, around other people, because those differences, once you come to identify and appreciate them, they just manifest greatness. They manifest positivity. Not to say it's always all, sunshine and rainbows out here, but it is to say that I think that I just can remember the conversations I've had with other people where they are kind of taken aback by the fact that we're going into territory they may have never gone into before, right? There's a level of empathy, or there's a level of understanding and compassion that, I mean, you can speak to it if it's true or not, but I feel like it comes with the territory in the most literal sense.
Yeah, California is the place I learned to talk about my feelings. Iowans don't talk about their feelings. Keep that shit inside. Like, and it's just so much healthier when they could finally be, on the outside of me. But yeah, there's a responsibility when you are a newcomer to the area to not just enjoy what's there, but to try and contribute to it and make sure you're not causing harm and be of service to the community. And it took me an embarrassingly long time to realize that if I love Oakland, I'm just taking advantage of Oakland unless I'm working to make it a place where everyone is included and safe and has a place to live and can be sheltered. And people like me moving into Oakland have caused so many problems. So if you live in Oakland, I'd like to recommend a specific reporter to you if you want to know how to, make a difference in Oakland local politics. Read Omar Yassin publishing at the Hyphenated Republic, and he's going to tell you, who's corrupt and, who's doing their best and, what's really going on with the issues and how we can make a difference on homelessness and policing and affordable housing and all the things that you really ought to be caring about if you're wandering around Oakland enjoying the scones and the beers and the culture. So.
Oh, definitely. I appreciate that. Definitely gonna be on the lookout for Omar Yassin. Hyphenated Republic. Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point around knowing how to be responsible when you're coming into a space, right? Like that sense of awareness of like, I know I love it here, but how do I reciprocate that love, right? Because it can be transactional at times, or it can be very one-dimensional, right, and not reflective of what love is and its complexity and multitude. And knowing that, just because you love something, is this a love of appreciation or is this a love of consumption, right? We can easily love anything, but it's our awareness of how that love manifests that makes the biggest difference. And it's important to be aware of how your impact will be felt, because the love, it's like I don't know if anyone remembers or knows of Tiny Toons. I believe it's Elmira. She loves animals. She absolutely loves animals. But on her head, she wears a bow that has a skull. And she is almost abusive to her love with animals, right? And that's the thing that people don't see. They so consume themselves with how they feel, they don't realize how it may unintentionally cause harm, right? Because Elmira would be the type to have a bunny and love the bunny and squeeze the bunny with so much energy, because that's the amount of love they have for the bunny. But the bunny is suffocating, it's dying, and it's choking off of that love. And that's kind of like the metaphor, if you will, of a lot of people who don't have that awareness or that sense of like just understanding of like, how is my love showing up? Is it showing up in a way that is restorative, that's repairing, that's, just taking away from the harm and adding into maybe the health or the, the helpfulness, right? The sense of wellness of the space? Or am I squeezing all the life and juices out of the thing that I love? And I think that, it almost like provokes the thoughts of the giving tree, right? It's like,
oh yeah, but the children's book, you're talking about that, right?
Yeah. The children's book that to me is such a, it's a metaphor for so much in our lives, right? That we keep coming back to something to give us so much, not realizing how much we're taking away, right? And even in the end, a lot of times, what it is we're taking from gives us more than we can ever imagine. And I think that knowing how to reciprocate that, right, leads to sustainability. It leads to change, right? Because I think that we live in a very in this society, American society, this wonderful place we live in is one of consumption, right? Where it's like we often take more than we need, or we take and it ends up wasting away, instead of thinking about how do we replenish what it is that we took from. And I feel like you highlighted that, by saying all that, right? By being aware of who am I and how do I apply myself to the people around me, but also listening to what's going on around me so I show up in a meaningful way. So I think that's important.
I love that you brought up the giving tree, because when my friend went through a nasty breakup, I redrew the last page of the giving tree to have a sprout coming out from the stump.
Bars.
Mhm.
I mean, that's what I mean, I'm happy to hear that, because I feel like that's what I needed to see, because it made me so sad to see this. I mean, I hate to spoil the book for people, but the last page is, I mean,
It's brutal.
it's brutal, right? It's like this sense of like, yeah, I'm doing what I want to do. Thanks. And it's like, oh man, but having that sprout of hope, right? Because it is one of those things that I feel like I needed to see. Shout out to the Giving Tree. Read that book to your kids if you got some. If not, read it for yourself. It still applies. But yeah, seeing that sprout means so much. Just hearing that you thought of it, that you did it for your friend, shows a level of care, and you uplifting the people around you, and what that means to you to be there for them in that way, to kind of write in where there's nothing to be written, or what's already been written, but adding to it in a meaningful way.
Mhm.
And I think that what it highlights also is like that editorial perspective, right? Like it's
Yeah.
about illuminating, right? How do I bring out what is it that you as a reader, or you as a person who's enjoying this, may miss or not see, right? And helping to clear up or maybe refine that vision, right? And I think that's key.
Mhm.
I think it's just important that people really take into accountability, who are they in a situation, and that awareness, right? Who are you, and why is it that you gravitate to what you gravitate to? And then how do you show up in a way that's being thoughtful? It's just not often spoken about. And I appreciate you like saying that.
Yeah. And I appreciate so much you having me as a guest here. It was a huge honor. And when I came in, I was like nervous. I was like, I have this list of things in my head that I should talk about. Should I have prepared more? And the magic of you as hosts is you pulled out of me the things that I cared the most about, that I didn't know I cared the most about them. So instead of talking about anything I planned to talk about, I actually talked about the stuff that was more important to me. And so I think it just felt so cool to have your warmth to bring that out. Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, it's you are important to us, right? Like that's the first thing, right? Like we're important together. That's the meaning of it. And who you are should be highlighted, uplifted, and shared with the world, right? Everyone deserves their moment to share themselves with the world in a meaningful and thoughtful way. And with that, even more important is, what is it that you wanted to share with everybody? Like, what were those things that, were on your mind that were like, this is my list and I'm going to be ready?
Yeah. So, I've been focusing lately on trying to write historical fiction based on the Bible. And when I think about, like, if I'm going to grow my own author platform and do the things that I always tell my authors to do in terms of getting yourself out there, finding readership, finding more people to listen to you, I want to kind of build my author platform around that, because people are scared of thinking about the Bible in new and creative ways. They think they'll get in trouble if they have the wrong interpretation. They're scared to think creatively. And I don't want them to be scared that way. I want them to feel like this story is their story and they can tell it in their own way. and someone else can tell it in their own completely different way. And both those ways are okay, and they do not contradict each other. Right. And one example of that is atonement theory. Most people only know the mainstream atonement theory. Jesus died for our sins. But there are many different theories about why he died and why that saved everyone. And so, example of trying to think creatively in my relationship with Jesus and my faith. I recently did a 83 tweet long thread on Twitter. The first tweet of which is, as a devout Christian, I really think it would have been better if Jesus had not died. And
unpopular opinion, right?
Weirdly, it was popular.
Oh, nice. No, but I think that's the thing about the unpopular opinion, that it's not really unpopular.
Yeah, so it's the opposite of what people say, but I got attention like I never got before on Twitter. I got people saying, like, I never thought of that before. And it was this whole thing, like, we glorify violence, like, lay down the myth of redemptive violence. Like, violence was not what was redemptive. His love was what was redemptive. That's my point. And and the thing I found out when I was researching it is the original symbols of Christianity were the dove, the fish, the lyre, the ship, the anchor, and those were the symbols that Christians carried around. And the cross didn't become a symbol until the Emperor Constantine saw a vision in the sky that Jesus was going to help Rome conquer everything. And that is when the cross became the mainstream symbol. Before it was like, no one used the cross.
Let it be known then. Let it be known then.
Yeah, and so
why get your anchors out?
Why is the Roman torture device the primary symbol of our faith? Why isn't it the dove of peace, the lyre of creativity, the ship of adventure, the fish of abundance? It's like that's what our faith's really about. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Let it be known. Let these people know. Like, I think that you bringing up a crucial point that often gets lost, because oftentimes how these things are introduced to us isn't from an organic source. Sometimes it's there, right? It's just permeated on you, right? You didn't get to publish the Bible as it was received, right? You didn't get to do that, right? It was just handed to you, and whoever decided this is what the iconography or what the structures were going to look like or the architecture was going to be, right? This is where the money went. And then you're looking and you're, wait, hold on, I need to look at this a little deeper. I need to be a little bit more critical of what it is because I'm reading what these words are and what it means to me and what it's highlighting and what it's manifesting. What I'm looking back when I look in the history of it, are we showing up in a way that is representative of what these words mean? Are we perpetuating it in a way that may have been more in the context of control than in of the abundance of love? Mm-hmm. And I feel like you said it, right? Get your doves out, get your anchors, right? Go and get your fish, because really, like, that's what it's about. It's about that love, right? If we're going to be in love, the closest thing you could get to the cross is a death row chain.
Yeah, it's like I wouldn't wear an electric chair on a necklace around my neck. Why am I wearing a cross?
Yes, and
I've always thought that,
and I appreciate that, because it doesn't suit the themes of Jesus' life at all. It's not reflective of his life. It's not thematic in his life, and I think what we learn about experiencing life with a relationship with Jesus is that he takes the themes and with his love transforms injustice, right, into strength. And just like in his life, he did that, where he saw injustice, and through his love, right, transformed injustice into abundance, into more life. And the cross, as as a depiction of his love didn't fit. He wasn't going around making sacrifices. Um,
He was helping the wine flow at the wedding.
yeah,
He was not a chop down giving tree.
no, he was not. He wasn't going around looking for rams to burn, um, or looking for lambs to cut. Right? He said, it's like I'm gonna take this bread and I'm gonna flip it, and we're gonna have some more bread. Uh, it's like, oh, so and so's dead. Nah, he sleep. Um, nah, he just let me go wake him up. Last, I know what you're thinking, but it's not even really what it is. And I think that's kind of what happens in life. It's like when we have this injustice, like he's like, that's not even really what it is. It's really your strength, right? It's really bringing out your empathy, um, right? Your pain is really right driving your purpose, and your empathy, allowing you to see the broken heart of others through what you've experienced, and you don't have to be hung uh, to be empathetic towards someone who who's about to be hung, or who has been hung. You don't have to lose your life in that sense. Instead, let go of who you think you are, or who the world is telling you you are, who you think you need to be, so that I can show you, um, who you purpose to be, who you designed to be, um, within the construct of loving somebody, in the construct of loving others, um, living for others versus dying for others.
That's so beautifully said.
Thank you, thank you. We vibing here. It's 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 one of those things. I think, one, I appreciate you also saying, Charlotte, that it's the warmth uh, that allowed you to talk about the things that were most important to you. Um, it's really important, I think, when we interact with each other within love, we feel sheltered. Um, we feel sheltered enough to show the things that are close to us.
Mhm.
Um, it's like, if everything that's close to me is underneath my coat, I'm not gonna take off my coat until I feel warm enough to do so. Um, and when we get into that space and we get into that interaction, that exchange, it reminds me of your person who wants to read every single word that you write, and you're in a space of warmth, right, where the coat is off, and you say, this is everything I've been carrying, right? This is everything that's close to me. And I hope for the folks that's listening, and for our other lyrical ones, um, that it's not about necessarily seeking that warmth, it's giving that warmth, um, because somebody may not have the capacity to be warm in that way, and so we can show them how to do so. We can show others how to do so, and then we can show our our coworkers, and corporations, and uh, the social media platforms, right? That we're the ones popping, and that we bring the warmth that allows everybody to be loud and proud for the things that are important to them. And I think that's why social media has been such a great platform in this last half, really last half decade, of people speaking out, and people joining in and lifting up those voices of what matters to people.
Mhm.
Oh, that's real. That's real.
Mhm.
All those people. We just wanted to create something that would better the world, that people could connect with. We just wanted to make people connect. All right, we see you. We see what's up.
Algorithm.
Use that math. Talking about connection. Who you want to connect? Or you dictating that too, huh? I get it. Who run it? That's what it really comes down to. Who run it, right? Because you're right. It's the people, right? I'm glad you said that, right? People be reminded. You run it. You run it. You are the
Yes.
You are the
fuel.
technology, is
You're the
what Kanye
technology.
said.
Yes, there. Thank you, Sonya Renee Taylor, for that one. You are the technology.
For real, for real. Because it's
Yeah.
easy to lose scope.
How lame would Instagram be if it was just a bunch of empty squares?
We
For real.
yeah. Ask
Well,
MySpace.
ask my face. Who holding on to them 8 friends now? Top 8 what? Ain't
Mhm.
top 8 nothing.
Mhm.
Shelley, do you got anything else you want to share with the people? Anything else you want to inform them about or raise awareness to?
Yeah. So I think I just want to tell people, please share the thing you're scared to share to the person that you think is just so cool, and something really good might happen next. I don't know. Maybe that sounds
That's
like
perfect.
silly.
That's perfect. No, it's perfect.
No, it's
It's
perfect. You right.
flawless.
Mhm.
It's
You right.
flawless. You nail on head.
Mhm.
Boom. For
Head
real.
on
For real.
nail.
Connected. So with that, Alfluent, you got any final words? Any final thoughts for the people out there that's listening?
Oh man, I really just like want to lift up and echo what Charlotte says. Like, share the thing that you scared to share with the person you think is cool. That's bars. And because that, I feel like that the vulnerability um, is our key to unlocking each other. uh, yeah, it's like for real, for real. We move closer together by moving closer together, and we have to show that we are not a threat by showing that we are not threatened. Um, and the more we can do that with each other, right, the safer we'll all feel, and the less we'll need to protect ourselves. Um, and it so much of that starts with, right, like saying like I hurt, or I've been hurt, or I've hurt someone, and I have these feelings about it, and you know I hope that you accept me still, for not being what I thought you expected me to be.
Yeah, that we show we are not a threat by showing we're not threatened. That's going to be rattling around inside my skull for a long time. I can tell. That's just beautiful. Mm-hmm.
As the great O.D. the Wordsmith would say, bars, 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 which I will be antagonizing him to produce and create and release to the world. I think
Nice.
O.D. the Wordsmith thinks the world is pretty cool, and he's scared to share his bars.
Yes, I agree.
So
I can't believe this.
I told you I was going to antagonize him. Where would you? It came full circle. So, as we often do at a time like this, I just, just one of those things you got to think about. Like,
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you for episode 50.
Yes. Thank you both so much. Thanks for being so
it's all
fabulous.
good. It's all good.
Charlotte Ashlock, we love you. Thank you for being here. Lyrical Ones, we love you. Yes, this is our song. One, 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 one.